I was boiling water for tea when I heard a slow knock on the door. 3 gentle taps. Not loud, not rushed, almost unsure. At first, I did not think much of it. The evenings in my neighborhood are quiet, and visitors rarely come without calling. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked toward the door. The kettle hummed behind me, and a soft breeze moved the curtains as I passed. When I opened the door, I froze. A man stood there, thinner than I remembered, with tired eyes and hair that had turned mostly gray. He held an old travel bag in one hand. His shoulders looked slightly bent, as if life had been pushing him down for a long time. For a moment, I could not breathe, because the man standing in front of me was my brother. My brother, who left home 20 years ago. My brother, who never called, never wrote, never came back for holidays, never checked on our parents, never came when our father died, never came when our mother spent her last years waiting for him. 20 years. And yet, here he was, standing on my doorstep like a memory that refused to stay buried. He looked at me with eyes full of 1,000 unspoken things: fear, regret, hope, shame, all mixed together. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, only a shaky breath. I felt my own throat tighten, not out of anger, but out of the kind of sadness that sits so deep inside your chest, you forget it exists until someone touches it again. I should have said something. I should have asked him why he left, why he returned, why now. But instead I whispered The house fell into an unfamiliar silence, the kind of silence that comes when life takes an unexpected turn. The kettle whistled in the kitchen, but neither of us moved. 2 decades of distance stood between us. 2 decades of questions. 2 decades of wounds we never talked about. And yet, he was here. My brother had knocked on my door again. My name is Miriam, and I grew up in a small house with my parents and my younger brother Daniel. People used to say we were close. They saw us walking to school together, sharing lunch, arguing over silly things like which cartoon was better or who got the bigger slice of cake. But inside the house, life was more complicated. Our father was a quiet, hard-working man. He believed in discipline and routine. He woke up before sunrise every day, made tea with ginger and cardamom, and sat alone on the veranda for a few minutes before leaving for work. His silence was not harsh, but it was heavy. You always felt like you had to earn his approval. Our mother was gentle, soft-spoken, and endlessly patient. She hummed old songs while cooking, stitched clothes for extra income, and always kept an extra seat at the table in case someone unexpected visited. I was the older child, the responsible one. Daniel was the dreamer, restless, curious, always looking at the world like it was a door waiting to be opened. Growing up, I felt I knew my place. I studied hard, helped mother in the kitchen, and tried to keep peace in the house. Daniel struggled with rules, not because he was rebellious, but because he felt trapped by expectations he never chose. Father tried to mold him into someone he wasn't. Stand up straight. Speak loudly. Why can you not focus? You must be stronger. You must act like a man. Daniel heard those words every day. I still remember the way he would look at me after Father scolded him. His eyes would say, "Why can't I be enough?" I tried to help him. I tried to protect him. But I was young too, and sometimes protecting him meant taking sides, and I did not always choose him. I told him to wait. I told him he was too young. I told him things would get better. I did not tell him the truth, that I was also scared of the pressure our father placed on him, that I saw how it crushed him a little more every day. He left anyway. He walked out with a small backpack and said he would call when he settled somewhere. He never did. At first, we waited. Then we worried. Then we searched. Then we hoped. And slowly, painfully, we accepted that he was gone. Mother kept his room clean for years. She placed fresh sheets. She dusted the shelves. She watered the plant by his window. Father pretended not to care. But sometimes, in the early mornings, I saw him standing outside Daniel's door, staring at it like it was a locked part of his heart. Time moved forward, as it always does. I got married. I had a daughter. I built a life filled with routine. But family wounds never fully disappear. They sit quietly under everyday life, waiting. When Father died, Mother whispered, "I wish Daniel knew." When Mother died, she whispered, "Maybe he will come back someday." I nodded, even though I did not believe it. Years passed, 20 years. Enough time to forget a face. Enough time to heal. Enough time to move on. Yet when I opened my door that evening and I saw my brother standing there, all the years folded into a single moment. When Daniel stepped into my living room, he paused, as if he was afraid to touch anything. His eyes moved slowly around the space, the sofa, the bookshelf, the family photos on the wall. I wondered what he saw. A home he had never visited, a life he had not been part of. He stood near the doorway, unsure whether to sit. I could see how tired he was, yet he did not want to assume his place. I pointed to the sofa. "Sit," I said softly. He nodded and lowered himself carefully, like a guest who did not want to damage the cushions. I walked back to the kitchen to turn off the kettle. My hands trembled slightly as I poured the tea into 2 cups. The scent of cardamom filled the air. The same kind our father used to make every morning. When I returned, he was staring at a picture frame on the table. The one with my daughter on her graduation day. He looked up as I placed the cups on the table. "She looks like you," he murmured. The sound of his voice, it broke something inside me. It had become deeper over the years, but still carried the same softness he had as a boy. "Yes," I said. "Her name is Aisha." He nodded again, as if trying to memorize every detail. I sat across from him. For a moment, we just held our warm cups. I waited. He took a breath and began. "I did not think you would recognize me." "I would know you anywhere," I said. He gave a sad smile, one that did not reach his eyes. His next words came quietly. I was afraid to knock. The room felt small suddenly, filled with all the things we had never said. "Why did you come?" I asked gently. He looked at his hands. I did not know where else to go. That answer landed heavily in my chest. It told me he was not here because life was good. He was here because life had cornered him. I kept my voice steady. "What happened, Daniel?" He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering courage. "I lost everything," he whispered. "My job, my home, my stability." He paused, the words getting heavier. "I have been sleeping in a shelter for the past few weeks, and when winter started, that he was successful, but chose distance, that he was angry, but safe, that he built a new life somewhere. I never imagined this. I never imagined my brother would return to me in such a broken state." "Why did you not reach out earlier?" I asked softly. He gave a small, bitter laugh. "I thought I would fix everything first. I thought I would come back only when I had something to show, something to be proud of. I kept telling myself, when I'm stable again, I will call her. But life kept pulling me down. Every year, I felt more ashamed." He looked up at me and his eyes were wet. "I thought you would not want me anymore." My chest tightened, not with anger, with something deeper. The quiet grief of all the lost years. "Family is not something we want or do not want," I said. "It simply is." He wiped his eyes and nodded slowly, as if those words felt strange but comforting. We sat in silence again, the kind of silence where hearts speak more loudly than voices. After a few minutes, he asked, How is everyone?" It was a question I had dreaded. I inhaled slowly. "Mother and father are gone." His entire face changed. He did not cry right away. He just stared at me, like the words had carved a hollow space in his chest. "When?" he whispered. "Years ago," I said gently. "Mother passed first, then father." His shoulders sagged, as if something inside him collapsed. He placed his cup down and covered his face with both hands. A long, shaky breath escaped him. I wanted to reach out, but I stayed still. Some grief needs space. I should have been there, he whispered through his hands. They waited for me. They missed you, I said quietly. They never stopped hoping. Daniel looked up, tears sliding down his cheeks. I failed them, he whispered, and I failed you. His guilt filled the room like a heavy fog. I shook my head slowly. You were young. You were hurting. You tried to survive the only way you knew. He looked unconvinced. He whispered, but they died without seeing me. I felt my own eyes sting. I know, I said, but they loved you. That never changed. Daniel leaned back and stared at the ceiling, trying to steady himself. His breathing was uneven, but he did not hide it. It struck me then how alone he must have been all these years. How many nights he must have carried this guilt with no one to share it with. How many mornings he woke up not knowing where he belonged. The conflict between us was not anger. It was 20 years of unsaid words, 20 years of separate lives, 20 years of a family that broke quietly. After a long pause, he whispered, I want to tell you everything, but I do not know where to start. Start anywhere, I said. I'm here. He took a shaky breath and began. When I left home, I was not running toward a dream. I was running away from myself. Every word Father said, every disappointment, every look, I carried all of it like a stone inside my chest. I thought if I could just go far enough, I could finally be free. He rubbed his hands together, as if trying to warm them. I worked odd jobs, restaurants, shops, construction. I slept in tiny rooms, shared spaces, sometimes on couches of people I barely knew. At first, it felt exciting. New city, new faces, no expectations. He paused, eyes distant. But life without roots is harder than it looks. People come and go, jobs come and go. Nothing stays. He swallowed hard. I tried studying again, but I could not focus. I switched jobs every few months. I got into debt. I made mistakes, too many. Some big, some small, some I still hate myself for. The room felt heavier with each sentence. I kept telling myself, I will go home when I fix things. But things kept breaking faster than I could fix them. He clasped his hands tightly, and then one day, I realized 20 years had passed. His voice cracked. I did not know how to come back. I did not know if I even had the right. I leaned forward slightly. You always had the right. He looked at me with a mix of disbelief and longing. You do not know what I became, he said quietly. Then tell me, I replied. He shook his head. Not yet. There was a vulnerability in him I had never seen before, not even as children. Slowly, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small, old envelope. The edges were frayed. The paper had yellowed with time. He placed it on the table. "What is this?" I asked. He did not look up. "Letters," he whispered. "For mother, for father, for you." My breath caught. "I wrote them over the years," he continued. "Whenever life hurt too much, whenever I missed home, I wrote letters I never sent." I touched the envelope gently. "Why did you not send them?" "Because I was ashamed," he said. "And because I thought you had all moved on without me." He looked away, jaw tight. I kept every letter, thinking maybe one day, if I ever gathered enough courage, I would bring them home. My heart ached for him, for the boy he was, for the man he had become, for the years lost in fear and shame. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside were folded papers, so many of them, each with different dates. The earliest was from 20 years ago, the newest from only a month ago. I placed my hand over the stack. "Do you want me to read them?" I asked. Daniel shook his head. "Not now," he whispered. "I just wanted you to know they exist." I nodded. He leaned back against the sofa, exhausted, not from the day, but from the years he had carried alone. After a long silence, he asked, almost timidly, "Can I stay tonight? Just tonight?" His voice. My answer came without hesitation. "Of course you can," I said. "This is your home." But inside, the conflict grew. Not between him and me, but inside him, inside me, inside the space between what was and what now needed to heal. The rising tension was not loud. It was quiet, heavy, emotional, made of old wounds resurfacing and new truths unfolding. And I knew the turning point was coming, the moment where everything would finally break open. Daniel slept in the guest room that night, the same room where Mother used to store her extra blankets, the same room where I kept old notebooks and forgotten boxes. I made the bed fresh for him. He stood in the hallway, as I did, looking unsure, like someone who had lived too long in places where kindness was rare. "Thank you," he said softly. He said it the way someone says thank you when the world hasn't been kind to them for a very long time. I nodded. "Get some rest." He entered the room slowly, as if afraid it might disappear if he moved too quickly. I turned off the light, closed the door halfway, and stood in the hallway for a moment. It was strange. For so many years, I had imagined what it would feel like if Daniel came back. I imagined anger, tears, but the reality was softer. The blankets folded neatly, the pillow sloughed, empty. For a moment, my heart stopped. But then I heard a soft clattering from the kitchen. I walked there and saw Daniel standing by the stove, holding a pan awkwardly, trying to fry eggs. He turned when he heard me. "I thought I would make breakfast," he said. A small, almost shy smile tugged at his lips. I wanted to do something. The sight of him cooking in my kitchen, my brother, after 20 years, made my chest tighten. Not with pain, with something close to hope. "You do not need to do anything," I said. "Just be here." He nodded, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. He was not used to being in a place where he didn't have to earn his stay. We ate breakfast quietly. Halfway through, he put his fork down. "I need to tell you something," he said. "There is something important I haven't said yet." I waited. He rubbed his hands together, nervous. "You think I came because I had nowhere else to go," he said. "That is true, but it is not the whole truth." His voice dropped lower. "I came because someone is looking for me." I felt a coldness in my stomach. "Who?" I asked calmly. He took a long breath. "The police." The world seemed to stop for a moment. The ticking clock on the wall felt louder. The hum of the fridge felt sharper. My voice stayed steady. "Daniel, what happened?" He looked ashamed, eyes fixed on the table. "I was working at a warehouse," he said slowly. "Night shifts. It paid poorly, but it was steady. Then I fell in with the wrong people. They were coworkers. A few weeks ago, the police visited the shelter I was staying in. They were asking about me. Not aggressively, just searching. I panicked. I left the city. I took buses. I slept outside stations. And then, for the first time in my life, I thought, I only have one person left. One door I can still knock on." His voice trembled. "I came to you not just because I was lost, but because I was afraid." I exhaled slowly. "So, what do you want to do now?" I asked. He looked at me, helplessly. "I do not know." I should leave. He picked up his bag, slinging it over his shoulder with shaking hands. "Daniel," I said calmly, "sit down." He froze. "Please," I added. He hesitated, then slowly lowered himself back into the chair. "You returning home is not danger," I said. "It is a chance, maybe the first real chance you have had in years." "How?" he asked bitterly. "I ruined everything. I messed up over and over." "That may be true," I said plainly, "but avoiding the problem will only dig the hole deeper." He looked exhausted. "So what are you saying?" "I am saying," I replied firmly, "that you need to face whatever you are running from, and you will not face it alone." His eyes widened slightly, a child's hope flickering in a grown man. But he shook his head. "No, I cannot. I do not have the strength." "You survived 20 years of loneliness," I said. "You survived poverty. You survived guilt. You survived shame. Do not tell me you cannot face truth." He stared at me, stunned. Then his voice broke. I am scared of going to jail. I know, I said softly, but sometimes the hardest road is the only way out of the dark. He lowered his head, shoulders trembling. I do not want to lose you again, I added quietly. And I do not want you living like a ghost. Daniel covered his face with his hands. For a while, there were no words, only quiet sobs, the kind that come from a place so deep a person cannot hide them. When he looked up again, his voice was barely audible. What should I do? First, I said, you talk to a lawyer, someone who understands your case, someone who can tell you the truth, not the fear. He looked uncertain. And second, I continued, you stop running. For a long moment, he stared at the table, lost in thought. Then he whispered, I am tired of running. I nodded. I know. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Can I stay here while we figure things out? His voice was so small, it broke my heart. Yes, I said, as long as you need. A long silence followed, not heavy, but fragile. Like the sound after a storm, when the world is unsure if the rain has truly stopped. Then Daniel reached into his bag again and pulled out a small box, old, worn, tied with a thin string. He placed it gently on the table. What is this? I asked. He took a shaky breath. These are the last things I have from home, things I took with me when I left. I have carried them everywhere for 20 years. I opened the box slowly. Inside were 3 objects. A faded photo of the 4 of us, mother, father, Daniel, and me. He was 14. I was 17. We were smiling. None of us knew how fragile that moment would become. A wooden prayer bead bracelet our mother used to keep near her pillow. Daniel must have taken it on the day he left. Father's old wristwatch, cracked but still ticking faintly. The strap was worn thin, like time had nearly rubbed it away. My breath caught. How did you? I took them, he admitted softly. I did not mean to steal them. I just needed to keep a part of home with me. I touched the watch gently. I kept it working, he whispered, even when I had nothing else. Something inside me cracked open. He had been broken, lost, alone. But he had carried our family's heart with him every step of the way. Daniel, I whispered, you never truly left. You just got lost. He closed his eyes, tears slipping down his face. And slowly, for the first time in 20 years, he leaned toward me. I wrapped my arms around him. He cried quietly into my shoulder, not loudly, not dramatically, just a slow release of all the pain he had swallowed for so long. I held him until his breathing steadied. This was the turning point. Not a loud revelation, not a dramatic confession, just a broken man finally allowing himself to be held again. After a while, He whispered, "Do you think it is too late to start over?" "No," I said. "It is late, but not too late." He nodded slowly, and for the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Not fear, not shame, not guilt, but the quiet beginning of hope. The next morning, Daniel woke earlier than me. I found him sitting at the dining table, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. He looked like someone who hadn't slept, but had made a decision. He didn't look lost anymore. He looked resolved, like a man who was finally willing to stop running. "I want to talk to a lawyer," he said quietly. I made tea and sat across from him. "Good." He nodded, but his eyes flickered with fear. "I do not know how these things work. I don't know what will happen." "You will not go through it alone," I said. "You have me now, and we will take each step together." He exhaled, relief softening his shoulders. After breakfast, I called a lawyer recommended by a friend, a calm, patient man who specialized in cases like Daniel's, people who made mistakes out of desperation, not malice. He agreed to meet us in the afternoon. Daniel changed his clothes. I noticed the way he checked himself in the mirror. Nervous, unsure, almost like a child preparing for their first day of school. On the way to the lawyer's office, Daniel kept fidgeting with Father's old watch, touching the cracked glass, adjusting the worn strap. It was as if he needed something familiar to hold on to. The building was small, quiet, a place where everyday people came to face the things they avoided for too long. The lawyer listened patiently as Daniel explained everything from the warehouse job to the stolen goods to the night he ran. When Daniel finished, the lawyer leaned back in his chair. "You made a mistake," he said simply. "But you did not commit violence. You did not steal for profit. You followed others because you were struggling. The law considers intention." Daniel watched him carefully. "Running makes things worse," the lawyer continued. "If you had come earlier. But even now, cooperation helps. Honesty helps. Surrender helps." Daniel swallowed. "So what happens to me?" The lawyer paused before answering. Not harsh, just honest. "You will need to face the investigation. You may need to appear in court. There may be consequences, but you will not be thrown into a dark hole. It will not be the end of your life." I saw Daniel's posture loosen slightly. Not comforted, but less terrified. The lawyer continued, "You also have something important in your favor. You came voluntarily. That tells the system you are not a threat. You want to fix your life." Daniel nodded slowly. "I do." The lawyer looked at him firmly. "Then we start the process, one step at a time. No rushing, no hiding." We left the office with a long list of documents, dates, and tasks, but also with something Daniel had not had in years: a clear path. On the ride home, he stared out the window. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought surrender meant losing, but it feels lighter than running." "That is because running is heavy," I said. "It fills your pockets with stones." He took a long breath. "I want to do things right this time." "And you will," I replied. The following weeks were slow but steady. Daniel stayed with me. He helped around the house. He cooked sometimes. He repaired old things I never had time to fix. A loose cupboard handle, a flickering light, a squeaky door. Small things, but they meant something. To him and to me. My daughter grew comfortable around him. She asked him questions about his travels, his years away, the odd jobs he worked. And Daniel answered with simple honesty. No elaborate stories, no excuses, just truth. Sometimes, in the evenings, we sat in the living room with soft music playing. The legal process began slowly. A few visits, a few forms, a few meetings, nothing dramatic. The police listened to Daniel's statement. They were cautious, but not cruel. The lawyer guided him through each part. Daniel followed every instruction carefully, almost fearfully, but with determination. He was not the man who ran anymore. He was a man trying to rebuild. One afternoon, after a meeting at the police station, Daniel and I sat on a bench. The air was warm, the light gentle. Leaves rustled overhead. Daniel leaned back. "I keep thinking about Mother," he said softly. "What she would say if she saw me now." I smiled sadly. "You know what she would say." He nodded. "She would touch my face and ask if I had eaten." "Yes," I said. "That would be the first thing." We both chuckled quietly. "And Father?" he asked. I paused. "Father would not show it," I said, "but he would be relieved." Daniel closed his eyes. "I wish I had come back sooner." I didn't respond right away. Regret is a deep well no one can empty. After a while, I said gently, "You can mourn the lost years, Daniel, but do not let them swallow the years you still have." He nodded slowly. "You are right." He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. "I wasted so much time." "Then do not waste the time you have left," I said. He smiled, small but real. Over time, Daniel grew more comfortable. He started going for morning walks. He helped neighbors carry groceries. He fixed a broken fence for the woman next door. People began to see him not as someone suspicious, but as a quiet, helpful man trying to find his place in the world. There were days he struggled, days he stayed in bed longer, days he looked haunted by memories, days he doubted himself, but whenever he felt himself slipping, he talked. Not always to me, sometimes to the lawyer, sometimes to a support counselor, sometimes just to himself, quietly while sitting outside. He was building something new, a routine, a rhythm, a life. Then came the day he feared most, the day he had to stand before the magistrate and answer for his past. I sat beside him in the small courtroom. No grand stage, no heavy drama, just a room where truth was spoken and measured carefully. Daniel stood when his name was called. His voice did not shake. He admitted what he needed to admit. He explained. He apologized. He did not hide. The magistrate listened with a neutral expression. After the hearing, Daniel sat down beside me, his hands shaking slightly. "That is it," he whispered. "I have done all I can." "Yes," I said quietly, "and whatever happens next, you will face it. You are not the same man who ran." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. It was not weakness, it was release. A few weeks later, the decision came. Daniel would receive community service and mandatory counseling. No prison, no long-term punishment, just accountability and a structured chance to rebuild. When I told him the news, he stared at me as if he did not understand the words. Then he covered his face and cried. Not in despair, in relief. "What did I do to deserve this chance?" he whispered. I put a hand on his shoulder. "Everyone deserves one." Daniel began his community service at a local food distribution center. He packed boxes, loaded supplies, helped elderly volunteers, learned new things. Slowly, he became part of their rhythm. He came home tired, but satisfied, something I had never seen in him as a teenager. He told me stories of people he met. A retired teacher who volunteered every day. A young man. Daniel's voice carried a quiet gratitude when he spoke of them. "It feels good to do something right," he said one night as we sat drinking tea. "For the first time in years, I sleep without fear." "And you earned that," I replied. He looked thoughtful. "I used to believe my life ended the day I left home. But now I feel like it is just beginning." One evening, he handed me Father's old watch. "Take it," he said. "You should keep it." "No," I said gently. "It stayed with you through your darkest years. It should stay with you now as you rebuild." He looked at the watch for a long moment and then nodded. "Maybe you are right." He strapped it back onto his wrist, the cracked glass catching the light. Months passed. Slowly, steadily, Daniel found work. Nothing grand, a small maintenance job at a nearby building. But it was honest, steady, good. He woke early. He took pride in it. He walked home with quiet satisfaction. One evening, he came home with a small envelope. "What is this?" I asked. "A little something," he said, "for the house, for everything you've done." I opened it and saw a small amount of money. "Daniel," I began, but he shook his head. "Do not refuse, please. Let me give something back." I looked into his eyes and saw something firm, steady, changed. So I nodded and placed the envelope in a drawer. And Daniel's shoulders relaxed with relief. The biggest moment came quietly, without ceremony. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found Daniel writing something on a piece of paper. "What are you doing?" I asked. He smiled softly. "I am making a list," he said. of the things I want to do now that I am not running. I sat beside him. What is on the list? He showed me. The first few lines were simple. Find steady work. Save money. Build a small room for myself. Stay close to family. Visit mother and father's graves. Start living instead of surviving. My throat tightened. He added one more line at the bottom. A line he wrote slowly, carefully, as if it carried the weight of everything he had lost. Forgive myself. He looked at me. Do you think I can do that? He asked. Yes, I said. One day at a time. He took a deep breath, folded the paper neatly, and placed it in his pocket. I sat quietly after Daniel finished speaking. My hands were resting on my lap, but they felt heavy, like they were holding everything he had just shared. 20 years of silence. 20 years of mistakes. 20 years of shame, loneliness, regret, and wandering. No part of me wanted to judge him. Not anymore. Some wounds are too old for punishment. Some stories are too painful to dissect. And some returns are simply too late to change the past, but not too late to soften the future. He looked at me as if he expected me to send him away, but that thought never crossed my mind. I spoke softly. Daniel, you came back. That's enough. He closed his eyes, and his breath shook. I think he had waited 20 years to hear those words. I continued, because the truth needed to be spoken out loud. Mother waited for you every single day. Father, too, in his own way. They both wanted one thing, for you to come home. He nodded slowly, as if each word pressed down on him. I know, he whispered, and I failed them. No, I said gently. You were young. You were hurting. You didn't know how to stay, and you didn't know how to leave properly. You weren't taught how to talk about pain. He lifted his head and looked straight at me. I wasn't taught how to be forgiven either. I leaned back and sighed. Forgiveness isn't taught, Daniel. It's chosen. Silence again. But it wasn't a heavy silence now. It was softer, like the air after rain. Then he asked something I wasn't prepared for. Can I see their graves? I felt my throat tighten. Yes, I said. Tomorrow morning, I'll take you. He nodded, and for a moment, he looked like the same boy who used to run barefoot across the yard, chasing dragonflies and laughter. We made tea, 2 cups, and sat together. Not as the strangers we had become, but not fully as siblings again either. Somewhere in between, a fragile place, but real. He asked about my life. I told him about my daughter, Hannah. I told him about my work, my small worries, my small joys. He listened quietly, as if he had missed every little detail of my life. And now he wanted to gather them all. And then he asked something unexpected. "Do you hate me?" The question hurt more than it should have. "No," I said. "I don't hate you. I never did. I was angry for a long time, yes. Disappointed, hurt. But hate? No, not once." He released a breath he had been holding for years. "Thank you," he whispered. "I don't deserve it, but thank you." I shook my head. "It's not about deserve. It's about choosing peace over bitterness." He looked down at his hands. "I want to stay for a while, not forever. I know I can't undo anything, but I want to be here, even if just for a little time." "You can stay," I replied, "as long as you need." His eyes softened with relief. That night, as he slept in the guest room, I stood outside his door, just like Father once did outside his. Life has strange circles. The next morning, the sky was pale blue, the kind of quiet color that makes you want to speak softly. We walked to the cemetery together. Daniel carried a small bouquet of white flowers, the same kind Mother loved. He kept glancing at them, as if unsure he had the right to bring them. When we reached the graves, he stopped. His shoulders trembled, his breath caught. He placed the flowers gently on Mother's grave. Then he knelt on the ground and bowed his head. I stepped back to give him space. He cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that felt like his heart had finally stopped running. He whispered apologies. He whispered memories. He whispered their names. When he moved to Father's grave, his expression changed. There was guilt there, deeper, older, heavier. He placed his hand on the gravestone. "I tried," he whispered. "I really tried." Those were the only words he managed. When he stood up, he wiped his eyes and looked at me. "Thank you for bringing me." "You needed to come," I said. "Yes," he agreed softly. "I needed to come home." We walked back slowly, without talking. Sometimes silence carries more healing than words. The days that followed were gentle. We talked. We cooked together. We walked in the garden. Sometimes he helped my daughter with her homework. Sometimes he just sat by the window, watching the world outside, like he was learning how to be part of it again. One evening, while we were drinking tea, he said something that stayed with me. I always thought returning would reopen wounds, but I see now it allows them to close. I nodded. That's what coming home means. He smiled a small, tired, genuine smile. A week later, he told me he was ready to leave again. Not to disappear this time, but to rebuild his life properly. "I'll call," he said, "and visit. No more vanishing." "I'll hold you to that," I replied. When he left, he hugged me tightly, like he was angering himself. Then he walked away with a steady pace. I watched him go, not with fear of losing him again, but with quiet hope. When I closed the door behind me, the house didn't feel empty. It felt lighter, because some returns don't change the past. They simply change the weight of it. In the end, this is what I learned. People disappear, but sometimes they find their way back. And when they do, forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It frees what's left. And that is enough.